The joint hearing will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess of the hearing at any time. I'd like to welcome everyone today to today's hearing entitled Balancing Knowledge and Governance, Foundations for Effective Risk Management of Artificial Intelligence. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. I'd like to welcome everyone to what I am hopeful will be a very fruitful discussion on foundational questions that Congress needs to answer to ensure that we strike a careful balance between protecting consumers and protecting innovation as we create a regulatory framework for artificial intelligence. Earlier this summer, the Science Committee held a hearing to explore how Congress can ensure that AI technology advances our national interest. One of the unifying takeaways from that hearing was that there remains a number of unsolved technical challenges which, if we address them, would advance innovation while making AI systems safer, more transparent, and easier to implement guardrails around. Today's hearing will build upon that theme by exploring how the Science Committee can support research, testing, and the development of methods and tools for managing AI risks. These tools and methods will be critical to the good governance of these systems as Congress examines how we should regulate artificial intelligence. I believe that foundational research on AI is a necessary precondition for safer systems. While regulations can make undesirable actions unlawful, technological advances in coordination with other countries in monitoring who has access to the compute necessary to train frontier AI models and how it's being put to use will be critical tools in supporting and enforcing these regulations. One example of this is the use of confidential computing to make the theft of AI models more difficult. It is currently relatively straightforward to steal an AI model because the data needed to operate the model, known technically as the model weights, is stored in raw data files. Stealing these files would allow criminals to use the model without spending the millions of dollars on compute and data necessary to train and develop the model. Stricter cybersecurity laws can only go so far in preventing this from occurring. However, recent research into confidential computing could potentially enable the model to be operated without allowing access to the model weights, rendering cyber theft of the model impossible and addressing the root causes of this problem. Another challenge that advances in research can help resolve is identifying whether AI has been used to generate content. It's clear that instances of identity fraud, plagiarism, and a host of other issues will become more and more common as the power of AI tools increase. Watermarking is a technique where digital content is encrypted with a unique, often hidden identifier that provides information about its origin. Watermarking has the potential to identify the origin of any content regardless of how it was created or digitally altered. Although current discussions of watermarking center on a desire that all AI-generated content be watermarked, watermarking can also be used to prove the provenance of authentic content. In fact, I believe it's entirely possible that in the future, people might automatically assume that any content is AI-generated unless its watermark proves its authenticity. Solving this technical problem would enable a new set of good governance tools concerning generative AI that were previously infeasible. These examples illustrate the fact that research and policy are not mutually exclusive, but in fact are mutually dependent. Research advances unlock previously unpractical approaches to regulation, and smart policy accelerates research. I believe we must also standardize technical definitions for methodologies, risks, and technological concepts across all of our agencies of government. The NIST AI Risk Management Framework lays out a foundation that other agencies can build upon. As these agencies consider passing rules or using procurement authorities to incentivize good behavior, they should also ensure a consistent methodology for assessing risk levels and tailor their policies accordingly. Another technical area in which Congress has a crucial role to play is promoting and establishing best practices. This includes everything from technical standards and evaluation benchmarks to testing the trustworthiness and risks of AI systems. And let us not forget that Congress should certainly not rush to overregulate, but we should also not be complacent. The U.S. must avoid falling behind other major world powers who are finalizing their AI standards and regulations. Without proactive American leadership, supremacy in AI could be seized by the EU or China, both of whom are taking far more draconian approaches to AI regulation. Because the U.S. currently leads the rest of the world in AI research and development, it makes no sense for us to stand by while American companies are forced to either make educated guesses or to play by others' rules. We must also ensure that our academic institutions continue to play an active role in research and development of AI, and that the transparent system of publication and peer review that has enabled its success thus far is not replaced with an opaque system where cutting-edge research is only performed by corporations. This is why I believe it's critical that we establish a national artificial research resource, NARE we call it, as a shared national research infrastructure to ensure researchers have access to the tools needed to test, develop, and create new AI-backed technologies. This idea was proposed earlier this Congress when I joined my fellow AI caucus chairs in introducing H.R. 5077, the Creating Resources for Every American to Experiment with Artificial Intelligence Act, or the CREATE Act, we call it. See what we did there? Establishing a shared computing and data infrastructure resource such as that detailed in the Act would democratize access to AI by providing researchers and students across scientific fields and disciplines with access to compute resources and high-quality data along with the appropriate educational tools and user support. I would like to thank all of our witnesses for taking the time this afternoon to join us for this important discussion. I'm looking forward to hearing your recommendations to how this committee can strengthen our nation's leadership in artificial intelligence and set clear rules for the safe, responsible, and human-centered development of this exciting new technology. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. Mr. Kratsios, I'd like to start with you, and I want to talk about federal preemption, because this is something that we're going to have to decide very soon whether or not the regulation of AI is something that is going to be federally preempted, or whether or not we're going to allow the states to be the laboratories of democracy and to innovate on this. Even if the federal government sets a floor for regulation, do we allow individual states to set a ceiling? So on the one hand, that would certainly be a more anti-federalist way to go about it. On the other hand, I fear that it might create a very complex legal and regulatory landscape that would make it difficult for smaller firms who don't have a building full of lawyers to rely on to be able to comply with. And I think it might be very destructive to entrepreneurialism. So from your industry standpoint, what do you think? We have three things we can do. We can fully federally preempt, we can partially preempt, and we can allow the states to set their own ceilings, or we can not act and allow the states to take the lead in this. What do you think of those three options?
My general view on this issue is federal preemption in areas of emerging technology tend to be, like artificial intelligence, can be extraordinarily beneficial to ensuring that the sort of larger marketplace of entrepreneurs is able to tackle the very important issues of building companies around this new tech. We've seen when patchworks do exist, ultimately you're not able to see the quick proliferation of technologies kind of across the country. I think the best example of this, or a really good one, is the struggle that Europe has had for many years in their long attempt to create a single digital market for a lot of their technology companies, and the failure to have one for decades kind of was a big hindrance to their ability to innovate. So my general sense is that I think we should begin by thinking about what type of federal preemption can ultimately be done. The other thing that I would worry a little bit about, and why I think there's some urgency to this, is there continues to be, as many of you I'm sure know, this almost sort of regulatory pipeline between Brussels and Sacramento. And California tends to be a state that likes to very quickly address some of these technology-related regulatory issues. And they see Brussels as kind of the place where they can sort of learn from. So my general sense is we probably should be wary of individual states like California running ahead. And I think there's a big opportunity for committees like this one to make it a much more clear regulatory environment for so many of our entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think at the very least, we in Congress have to recognize the federal responsibility to regulate interstate commerce, and the fact that that is a federal obligation and not something we can allow the states to preempt. So I think that's a strong argument for the federal government to take a leading role in this. But the point is, this is a decision that has to be made soon, because the mistake that was made with digital data privacy is federal inaction, which allowed, now we have 23 different state frameworks, probably more to come in the months and years ahead, that create this patchwork of regulation that's very difficult for small companies to deal with. And now there's a creative ownership amongst the states that makes it more difficult for us to preempt at the federal level. So I think if we're going to do it, it has to be done now. Ms. Tabasi, I would like to ask you a question about the path that we take in crafting a federal regulatory framework for AI. And NIST, I think, has done some of the furthest reaching work on looking at risk management and looking at what a framework might look like. In my thinking, we really have two paths. We can follow the European model where we spin up a brand new bureaucracy and empower them with the ability to issue licenses and preempt that authority away from the existing sectoral regulators. Or we can empower our existing sectoral regulators to regulate within their sectoral spaces and give them the tools and the resources that they need, which would include support from organizations like NIST in developing testing and evaluation standards and the frameworks that you've already been working on to be able to do those jobs. Which of those two approaches do you think would be best? I mean, is it like if you consider the fact that the FDA has already processed over 500 applications for the use of AI in medical devices, the question is it easier to teach a new organization everything the FDA knows about ensuring patient safety, or is it easier to teach the FDA what it doesn't already know with the help of organizations like NIST about artificial intelligence?
Thank you for that question. As we all know, NIST is a non-regulatory agency, so we don't take
That's why I asked you.
Regulation agnostic.
You don't have a dog in the fight.
Thank you. The approach we took in development of the AI-RMF is actually a hybrid approach. The AI-RMF provides the horizontal, the interoperable lexicon to talk about risk. So because we want to make sure that the risk or bias or interpretability has the same meaning, and hopefully similar measurement techniques and methods across all of the different sectors. And think about development of the profiles, which are verticals that give more specificity for that domain. One other thing that I also want to mention, a lot of really good and important noting that importance of availability of metrics, methodologies, test environment, and measurement science for evaluations of AI systems, limits, capabilities, functionality, and trustworthiness. So regardless of the regulatory or policy landscape, we do need to have measurement science methods and methodologies to ensure the AI assurance, because again, if you can't measure it, we cannot improve it.
Well, we need to clearly keep talking about this issue.